guys. Welcome to another episode of Evolve. I am so grateful to be with you today, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If you were in Florida and affected by the hurricanes, I pray that you are powered back on and recovered and getting your life back together. For the people of Hurricane Harvey that suffered through that and the earthquakes in Mexico, I think we need to collectively just start praying for our planet, which is definitely sending us a message. So I want to send all of you guys my love, thoughts, and prayers. I hope you made it through. I'm so happy to be joining you today. I made it through. We have power, and I'm able to talk to you today, and for that, I am truly grateful, and I'm grateful that we're still here. To my family in the Keys, my hometown, essentially, I send all the love I can to you guys there as you really recover. Usually in the Keys, it's interesting. There's this mentality that we can ride out any storm. Now, I say we because once a Keys girl, always a Keys girl, right? So you can ride out any storm. People usually don't evacuate, and they hang out. But what I've seen from my friends that live there that did evacuate and have sent pictures, and family that lives there that did evacuate and sent pictures, and the pictures we're seeing on the news, it looks like a war happened down there. I've never seen anything like it. We rode out a few storms. I was there for Hurricane Andrew, which hit Homestead, which is just above the Keys. But still, we didn't have power for several weeks and all of those things. And I have not seen anything like that since I was 12 years old. So it was very impactful to me. Next time anything happens, guys, and apparently if you're taking a look at the weather forecast, these hurricanes are coming, fast and woolly pretty quickly here. Please take your precautions. If you live in the South, if you live on the East Coast, anywhere, it doesn't seem like anybody's exempt nowadays, and it seems like these are super hurricanes, so please be careful. So that's my public service announcement about hurricanes, but I want to get into the show today. I'm going to start the show in a different way than I normally do. A scripture is how I'm going to start the show today. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not as pleasing men, but God, who examines our hearts. Meaning we are not to be pleasing men or even following men, but God, the universal source, the truth, the place where all energy and power emanates and comes from. This week on Evolve, I want us to really talk about what's in our hearts, what we really believe, and how we can be influenced by amazing teachers and others that may lead us astray. I want to neutralize the idea that people who shift our paths are good or bad, but maybe we can say they're just human instead. So today we're going to talk about the feeling of betrayal and hope and adoration and how it can all be rolled up into one confusing ball. This week we're going to get into gurus. So when we're talking about gurus, let's talk about the definition. You know I love my definitions, folks. So it is derived from Buddhism or Hinduism, and it essentially means a spiritual teacher, especially one who imparts initiation. It means teacher, it means tutor, it means sage or mentor or spiritual leader or master. I think that's interesting, the last part that I read that says one who imparts initiation. When we are evolving, there are spiritual initiations that happen. For some of us, it's angel numbers and feathers. For some of us, it's traveling to an ashram in India or an ashram in La Jolla, California, and getting our mind together. For some of us, it involves yoga practice, meditation out by waterfalls and quiet spaces. But there are initiations that happen where we start to quiet our minds and get focused on a spiritual truth, and we start to elevate. Usually someone teaches us or leads us or catches our interest, and sometimes we think it's coincidental. Oh, I just happened to have this book fall on me at the bookshelf at Barnes & Noble's, or I just happened to stumble across a social media post that really uplifted me and spoke to me. That's how we're always being communicated with. You know that's the drum that I beat. but we do have teachers along the way. And in my lifetime, I have had some great teachers. And in my lifetime, I have had some great teachers. Now, what I wanted to say was some bad ones, but the truth that even just came to me now has nothing to do with what I had planned, is that all teachers are great teachers, meaning there are lessons to be derived, and they do initiate you to the next level of your life. So even in the moment when you may say, this was bad or this was good, and you deem it as unhealthy, as I've shared some of my experiences with you, I learned incredible lessons, even in those toxic and unhealthy places. So I want us to talk about gurus. And I want to talk about the trend of the guru. Now, that's been around forever. There's always gurus. There are always people that are seeking to follow someone. The biggest essential guru that we can think about, I think, is Jesus, really. He was essentially a guru, and that's why the Pharisees didn't like him, because they thought, how dare he go against our rituals with all this kind of, they thought what he was doing was new agey, quote unquote, okay? So that may be a controversial thing, but that is exactly what was going on. He was really teaching us we have God in us, we follow God, we are tasked to be kind and figure out life as we go, but we do look to the Father, God, universe, source, okay? Now, here's an interesting thing that happened in the 90s. There was a core group of teachers that emerged from the freshman class of the movie The Secret. So you remember, if you heard about The Secret, it was all over Oprah, it was splashed everywhere, and it was all about harnessing your inner power. It was about the law of attraction, and it was super, super popular. Before that, in the 80s, it was Dianetics. Okay, so Ron L. Hubbard, I believe, Dianetics, and it was about harnessing the power of your mind. Now, that grew into a whole different thing, so we will talk about that's another show. But when it got into the 90s, we're talking about The Secret. And one of the gurus that emerged from The Secret was a man named James Arthur Ray. And I recall watching him on Oprah for many years, because she had him on back-to-back shows. And I remember getting a feeling about this guy. Something didn't sit right with me. We're always being communicated with. And so upon researching him, I realized that he hails from a telemarketer's background. In the 80s, that's what he did. He kind of got very good at it. And essentially, he was a salesman who was excellent in his craft of selling. And that is not to say that a salesman cannot be enlightened, but it does not escape me that when his life required that he observe healthy boundaries, he leaned in and pushed past comfortable norms that we do obey in our society in order to achieve what he thought would be a greater spiritual initiation for his clients. So he has a documentary, and the documentary is on Netflix. You guys can check it out. It's called Enlighten Us, and it's not his documentary. He didn't make it about himself. It was made about him because he's a fascinating case study in charisma. As I was watching the documentary, I realized that he was consumed in ego, even in this moment. And you may say, well, what's the documentary about? We're going to get into it. There was this vacancy, though, in his eyes as he was doing The Secret. I remember years ago not connecting with him personally, and that doesn't mean that other people didn't, but I didn't connect with him personally. There was something that was off to me, and it was acquisitory. There was an acquisitory expression about him while I was watching him talk about The Secret and the limitless possibilities that were coming to him. And it wasn't about limitless spiritual possibilities. It was about the world being his oyster. It was a very materialistic thing. Like, he understood. He had a sense about the phenomenon that he was part of, and he knew that he was on the precipice of something very important and potentially incredibly lucrative. I am not surprised that a person in a background in sales totally understood that, hey, money is here, and it is to be made. Now, this is an interesting thing, another show as well. There's a weird dichotomy between the spiritual community, metaphysical community, and how money comes in and being worthy. There's a lot going on. And there's a whole, in Christianity, thing called the prosperity gospel. We just recently saw Joel Osteen kind of get eviscerated, and they say he's part of the prosperity gospel, and he wasn't doing what Jesus taught, which is to be of service to the community. That was our perception. You can debate me on that later, but what I will say is that There are many instances where people are struggling in spirituality with, do I take the money and say I want the money? Creflo Dollar recently asked his congregation to fund a $65 million jet for him because he felt like he needed like the best top-of-the-line elite jet. And a lot of debate about that. So there's a weird issue with money and being spiritual on any level, whether it's Christianity or New Age spiritualism, however you want to label it. But this guy, this James Arthur Ray, he was aware because he was a sales guy. He said, "Oh my goodness, I'm here." And I saw it in his face. He likes what's happening here. He likes the fame. We all have egos. Now, I'm watching him on the documentary, and as he grapples with taking responsibility for the events that happened in the desert that very fateful day, I noticed the same vacant look. He hadn't learned the lesson yet, but his followers, unfortunately, had. In October of 2009, this guy was on the top of his game. He was a best-selling author, a spiritual leader, and he disdained the actual term self-help guru. He would always tell people, don't call me that, I don't like it, I'm nobody's guru. Unfortunately, some of the things that he ended up doing were stereotypically very guru-ish, if you will. At this time when he was really at the height of his success, his company had earned $9.4 million. His books and DVDs, his seminars were marketed to those who eagerly embraced the idea of his philosophy of personal growth, and they were asked to confront their issues by learning and pushing through and dealing with their fears. He was absolutely one of the stars that came out of The Secret. So we talked about him being on Oprah, all of that. He had a lot of people that wanted access to him because we've talked about the Midas touch that Oprah has. And she was really at the height of her Midas touch then, especially, too. So couples were paying more than $100,000 a year to join this exclusive circle with one-on-one access to him. They were charged, some people that weren't in the exclusive circle were charged $9,695 apiece for clients to attend a 5-day retreat in the scrublands outside of Sedona, Arizona. So 60 people signed up for this retreat. Now, he had done the retreat before, but on this particular retreat, 3 people died as part of a sweat lodge experience and exercise that he led. Everything that he had built collapsed, and that's what's really explored in this Enlighten Us, the rise and fall of James Arthur Ray. Really check it out. Now, what this film does, what I thought was interesting, is it really kind of explores not only the questions of Ray's personal responsibility, but the needs and responsibilities of those who seek to be led. We all, in some way, are seeking to be led. We all, in church they talk about having a God-sized hole, and that people are always trying to fill that God-shaped hole with everything. So it could be addictions, it could be a relationship, it could be whatever. But what they're really looking for is deep spiritual connection. And that's what it means to be seeking to be led in my interpretation of it. So when these people trusted him, they paid their money, and they went to this sweat lodge. And when they got in there, he said, he was very honest. So it's like this 415-square-foot makeshift kind of sweat lodge. Essentially, it's a yurt, if you're familiar with what a yurt is, a round kind of structure. Mongolian-based, I believe, is actually where that comes from. But it's a yurt. And so it was all about pushing them to their limits and to cleanse the body and the mind and all that guru-ish stuff that I was talking about. And he promised it's going to be the most intense heat that you've ever experienced. So he was being honest about what was going on. So you think, okay, no fault there. But as wave after a wave of hot rocks were brought inside and steam and water was created, people were overcome. And some of them died at the scene, 2 of them. 19 were hospitalized, and a 3rd person later died. So that made the 3 that perished in this very unfortunate situation.